Ethan had learned long ago that the desert moon did not forgive mistakes. The sun was always too bright, the wind always too sharp, and the silence always hiding something dangerous. He moved slowly across the cracked ground, his boots sinking slightly into pale dust as he dragged a cart full of scrap metal behind him. The cart creaked with every step, but he ignored it. Noise did not matter much here. Everyone worth fearing already knew where the water stations were. He was a human, one of the few left on this moon. Most had left years ago when the gangs took control of the trade routes. Ethan stayed because leaving required credits he did not have, and because this place, harsh as it was, had become familiar. He knew where to find shelter, how to avoid patrols, and how to survive with very little. The abandoned water station rose ahead of him like a broken tooth. Its metal sides were rusted, its doors bent open by time and sandstorms. Ethan sighed. He had hoped to find something useful inside, maybe a filter or a battery. Even broken things had value if you were patient enough. As he stepped closer, something caught his eye, a shape near the shadow of the station. At first he thought it was scrap or a piece of torn fabric. Then it moved. Ethan froze. His hand went to the small pulse pistol at his side, but he did not draw it. Slowly, carefully, he approached. There, half hidden behind a fallen panel, lay an alien woman. Her skin was a pale blue-gray, cracked and dry. Her breathing was shallow. In her arms she held a small child, barely moving, its eyes half closed. Both looked close to death. Water. They were dying of thirst. Ethan looked around quickly. The desert stretched empty in every direction, but emptiness meant nothing. Gangs loved places like this. Easy ambush points, easy traps. Helping them would be dangerous. Ignoring them would be easy. He swallowed and knelt beside them. The alien woman's eyes opened weakly. They were large, dark, and filled with fear. She tried to pull the child closer as if Ethan were another threat. "No," Ethan said softly, raising his hands. "I'm not here to hurt you." He doubted she understood the words, but his tone seemed to reach her. Her grip loosened slightly. The child whimpered, a dry, painful sound. Ethan opened his pack and pulled out a small water flask. It was not much. He had planned to make it last 2 days. He hesitated only a second before opening it. "Small sips," he murmured, though again, she probably did not understand. He held the flask to her lips. She drank carefully at first, then more urgently until he pulled it back. He gave some to the child next, watching closely as the tiny chest rose and fell more evenly. The woman's eyes filled with tears. She pressed her forehead to the child's head and made a soft sound Ethan had never heard before, but he understood it anyway. Relief. He helped them sit up, then scanned the horizon again. Still nothing. That did not mean they were safe. "Can you move?" he asked, gesturing toward his cart and then toward the distant hills where his shelter lay hidden beneath the ground. The woman followed his gestures. Slowly, painfully, she nodded. It took time. The child was weak, and the woman leaned heavily on Ethan as they walked. Every step felt louder than the last. Ethan's nerves screamed at him to hurry, but rushing would only draw attention. By the time they reached the hidden entrance to his shelter, the sun was already sinking low. Ethan quickly opened the concealed hatch and guided them inside, sealing it behind them. The underground space was small but cool. Metal walls, a sleeping mat, shelves full of scavenged parts. The woman looked around with wide eyes, clearly unsure if this was safety or another trap. "You're safe here," Ethan said, handing her another small ration of water. "For now." She drank, then surprised him by speaking. The words were strange, broken, but close enough to trade language that he could understand pieces. "Hunters," she said quietly. "They follow bad ones." Ethan's stomach tightened. "Gangs," she nodded. "They want my child." The child stirred, clutching her clothing. Ethan crouched down to their level. "Why?" he asked. The woman hesitated, then gently pulled back part of the child's sleeve. Ethan saw faint glowing patterns beneath the skin, like light trapped under ice. Rare, she said. Very rare. Ethan leaned back slowly. He had heard rumors. Children born with unusual traits, valuable to gangs for experiments, weapons, or trade. He felt anger rise in his chest, hot and sharp. They won't find you, he said, more confidently than he felt. But even as he spoke, a distant vibration passed through the ground. Engines. The woman stiffened. Fear returned to her eyes. They are close, she whispered. Ethan moved quickly. He shut down unnecessary lights, activated sound dampeners, and pulled out old sensor equipment he had repaired months ago. Blips appeared on the cracked screen. Multiple signatures. Armed. Organized. The gangs had arrived. Ethan took a slow breath. He had avoided them his entire life on this moon. He knew their rules. If they suspected something, they would tear everything apart to find it. He turned to the woman. "No matter what you hear," he said, "you stay quiet. If I don't come back right away, there's a tunnel behind that panel. It leads far out into the rocks." She looked at him with disbelief. "You stay?" "Yes." "Why?" she asked. Ethan did not answer right away. He thought of all the times he had been ignored, passed over, treated like nothing because he was just one human on a forgotten moon. "Because someone has to," he said. The engines grew louder. Shadows passed over the surface above them. Ethan climbed the ladder and opened the upper hatch just enough to step outside, sealing it behind him. The air smelled of dust and burned fuel. 3 figures stood near the water station ruins. Tall, armored, not human. Their weapons were already raised. One stepped forward. "Human," the warrior called. "We know someone passed this way. Speak." Ethan kept his face calm. "I salvage here. I've seen no one." The warrior's eyes narrowed. "You lie." Behind him, another activated a scanner. Ethan's heart pounded, but he did not move. He had modified the area with scrap shielding months ago. It was not perfect, but it might be enough. The scanner beeped once, then went silent. The warrior clicked his teeth in annoyance. "Search his shelter." Ethan's pulse spiked. "I live alone," he said. "Nothing of value." The warrior stepped closer, towering over him. "Then you will not mind if we look." Ethan smiled slightly, a tired human smile. "I do mind," he said. The warrior paused, surprised. Humans usually begged. They usually broke. Ethan stepped back toward the hatch. His hand brushed a hidden switch in the rock wall. The ground beneath the warriors shifted suddenly. One stumbled as a concealed pit opened beneath him, metal snapping shut around his leg. Another raised his weapon, but it sparked and failed as an old EMP charge detonated nearby. Ethan ran. Blaster fire scorched the ground behind him as he dove into the hatch and sealed it just as explosions rocked the surface. Dust rained down from the ceiling. Inside, the woman clutched her child, eyes wide. "They know," she whispered. "Yes," Ethan said, breathing hard. "And now they're angry." The shelter shook as heavy steps moved above them. Ethan grabbed his pack and weapons. "This is just the beginning," he said, "but you're not alone anymore." Above them, the gang warriors regrouped, their anger growing into something darker. They had wanted an easy hunt. Instead, they had found a human who refused to step aside. And the night on the desert moon was just beginning. The night stretched long and heavy over the desert moon. Above the hidden shelter, the gang's warriors moved like shadows, angry and loud, their voices echoing across the rocks. Ethan stood in the dim light underground, listening to every vibration through the walls. Each step above felt like a hammer striking his chest. The alien woman sat against the wall, holding her child close. The child was awake now, eyes open, watching Ethan with quiet curiosity. The glow beneath the child's skin pulsed faintly like a slow heartbeat. "They will not leave," the woman said softly. Ethan nodded. "No. Not tonight." He moved to a storage rack and pulled out several old devices. Most were patched together from scrap, parts taken from crashed drones, broken mining equipment, and forgotten military tech. None of it looked impressive. But Ethan knew how each piece worked and, more importantly, how to make it fail in dangerous ways. The ground shook as something heavy struck the surface above. Dust drifted down from the ceiling. "They are trying to break in," the woman said, fear shaking her voice. "They won't get through easily," Ethan replied. He knelt and opened a floor panel, revealing a narrow tunnel. "If things go bad, you take this path. It will lead you far from here." She looked at the tunnel, then back at him. "And you?" "I'll slow them down." She stared at him, confused. "You owe us nothing." Ethan paused. "Maybe, but that child deserves a chance." Another impact thundered above them. A crack appeared in one of the walls. Ethan stood. "Stay here, quiet." He climbed the ladder again, emerging into the cold night air. The desert was lit by harsh white lights now. 4 gang warriors surrounded the area, their armor reflecting the glow. One of them knelt by the damaged ground trap, growling in frustration. "You hide well, human," the leader said, "but you cannot hide forever." Ethan raised his hand slowly. "You already lost one of your men." The warrior laughed, a harsh metallic sound. "He was weak." "Then you should be careful," Ethan replied calmly. "This place is full of weaknesses." The leader's eyes narrowed. He raised his weapon and fired. Ethan dove aside as the blast tore into the rock behind him. He rolled, activated another hidden charge, and the ground erupted between them. Flames and dust filled the air. The warriors staggered back, cursing. Ethan ran, drawing them away from the shelter entrance. He knew the terrain better than they ever could. Every ridge, every loose stone, every hollow had been studied over years of survival. One warrior chased him too closely. Ethan slid down a slope, then suddenly turned and kicked loose a support beam. A pile of scrap collapsed, trapping the warrior beneath it. The alien screamed in rage, pounding the metal. Ethan did not stop to watch. Blaster fire flashed past him. Pain exploded in his shoulder as a shot grazed him. He bit back a cry and kept moving, forcing his body to obey even as blood soaked his sleeve. Humans did not give up easily. That was something the gangs never seemed to understand. Ethan reached a ridge and activated a beacon he had buried long ago. It was old, weak, and unreliable, but it was all he had. "Come on," he whispered. "Please work." The device hummed faintly, sending a short signal into the void. Behind him, the warriors regrouped. The leader raised his weapon again, aiming carefully this time. Ethan turned to face them, breathing hard. "You should leave," he said. "Now," the leader sneered. "We will take the child, and then we will take your life." Ethan smiled, blood on his teeth. "You'll have to earn it." He triggered another trap. The ridge beneath the leader cracked, dropping him several meters. The warrior landed hard but rose quickly, furious. "You will die slowly," the leader promised. They advanced together now, cautious but relentless. Ethan retreated step by step, drawing them farther away from the shelter. Underground, the woman felt the vibrations growing stronger. The child whimpered softly. She pressed her hand over its glowing skin, tears running down her face. "Be quiet," she whispered. "Please." Minutes passed. Each one felt like an hour. Then the shelter shook violently. A blast tore through the upper entrance. Smoke and debris poured down the ladder. "They are inside," she whispered in horror. She remembered Ethan's words. The tunnel. With shaking hands, she stood and moved toward the hidden panel. The child clung to her, frightened but silent. Just as she reached the tunnel, footsteps echoed in the shelter. A tall warrior stepped through the smoke, weapon raised. "There you are," it growled. The woman turned, shielding the child with her body. The warrior raised its weapon and then froze. A sharp crack echoed as the weapon sparked and died. The warrior looked down, confused, as electricity surged through its armor. It collapsed, unmoving. Ethan stumbled into the shelter behind it, barely standing. He had taken another hit. His breathing was ragged, his face pale. "Tunnel," he gasped. "Now." "But you," the woman began. "No time," Ethan said. "Go," more voices echoed from above. The gang was closing in. The woman hesitated only a second. Then she bowed her head slightly, a gesture of deep respect. She took the child and disappeared into the tunnel. Ethan sealed the panel just as blaster fire tore into the room. He rolled behind a metal crate, firing back with shaky hands. Each shot cost him more strength. The warriors flooded the shelter surrounding him. The leader stepped forward, eyes burning with rage. "You failed, human," Ethan laughed weakly. "Did I?" The leader snarled and raised his weapon. A loud roar shook the ground. Not an explosion. "Engines," the leader froze. "What is that?" The air above screamed as ships descended from the sky. Bright lights cut through the darkness. Human ships. Ethan collapsed onto the floor, relief washing over him like cool water. The warriors cursed and ran for cover as precise strikes hit the ground around them. Human soldiers poured out, moving with calm efficiency. "Drop your weapons," a voice commanded. Some of the gang fought back. They did not last long. The leader tried to flee, but a stun blast dropped him where he stood. Ethan watched through blurred vision as the battle ended. Silence slowly returned to the desert moon. A human medic knelt beside him. "Stay with me," she said. "You did good." Ethan closed his eyes, exhaustion finally claiming him. Far away, deep within the rocks, the alien woman emerged from the tunnel under the stars. She looked up at the human ships in awe. For the first time in a long while, she felt hope. And the gangs learned something they would never forget. When a human chose to protect someone, even the desert itself seemed to rise with him. Ethan woke to the sound of steady beeping and soft voices. For a moment, he thought he was still dreaming. The desert moon was never this quiet. The air was cool, clean, and did not smell of dust or fuel. He opened his eyes slowly. A white ceiling stretched above him. Soft lights glowed along the walls. He tried to move and felt pain spread through his shoulder and side, sharp but controlled, like it was being held back by something stronger. "You're awake," a calm voice said. Ethan turned his head. A human medic stood beside him, checking a small screen. She smiled when she saw his eyes open. "Easy," she said. "You've been through a lot." "Where?" Ethan's voice came out rough. "Frontier medical ship," she replied. "We picked you up just in time. Another few minutes and it would have been much worse." Ethan swallowed. Memories rushed back. The gang, the shelter, the alien woman and her child. "They got away?" he asked quickly. The medic nodded. "They're safe." Ethan closed his eyes, relief washing over him so strongly that his chest ached. He let out a slow breath he felt he had been holding for days. "How long?" he asked. "2 days," she said. "You were unconscious most of the time." Ethan rested back against the bed. 2 days felt like nothing and forever at the same time. Later, when he was strong enough to sit up, a human officer came to speak with him. The officer wore simple armor, marked with the symbols of the frontier forces. His face was serious but respectful. "You sent the distress signal," the officer said. "Old code, almost missed it." "I hope someone would still be listening," Ethan replied. The officer nodded. "We are, always." He explained what happened after Ethan lost consciousness. The gang had been fully removed from the area, their ship seized, survivors taken into custody. The desert moon, long ignored, was now under human protection. "You changed things here," the officer said. "More than you know." Ethan shook his head slightly. "I just didn't step aside." The officer studied him for a moment, then gave a small smile. "That's usually enough." When the officer left, Ethan lay back again, feeling the weight of exhaustion and something else he had not felt in a long time. Purpose. Hours later, the door to the medical room opened again. This time, the medic stepped aside, allowing 2 figures to enter. The alien woman walked in slowly. She looked healthier now. Her skin no longer cracked. Her eyes were brighter, though still cautious. In her arms, the child rested peacefully, glowing faintly beneath soft coverings. Ethan's breath caught. "You're really okay," he said quietly. The woman nodded. She stepped closer, then stopped a short distance away, as if unsure how close was allowed. She looked down at the child, then back at Ethan. "You stayed," she said in broken trade language. "You fought." Ethan shrugged slightly. "Anyone would have." She shook her head firmly. No, many did not. She lowered herself carefully, kneeling beside his bed. It was an alien gesture, but the meaning was clear: respect, gratitude. "My name is Sira," she said, "and this is Leo." The child opened its eyes and looked at Ethan. For a moment the glow beneath its skin brightened. Then the child made a soft sound, almost like a laugh. Ethan smiled despite the pain. "Nice to meet you, Leo." Sira hesitated, then gently placed the child's small hand on Ethan's finger. Leo's grip was weak but warm. "He feels safe," Sira said quietly. "He has not felt that in a long time." Ethan felt his throat tighten. He looked away for a moment, pretending to adjust his position. "I'm glad," he said. They stayed for a while, speaking softly. Sira told him pieces of her story. How her people had been hunted for their rare traits. How she had run across worlds, always hiding, always afraid. How the gangs had promised safety, then demanded her child. "Humans," she said, watching Ethan closely, "are different from the stories." He gave a small, tired laugh. "We have bad stories too, but also good ones," she replied. When they left, Ethan felt strangely empty and full at the same time. Days passed. Ethan healed slowly. Human engineers visited the desert moon, dismantling old gang structures and restoring water stations. New signals went out across nearby systems. The message was clear: this place was no longer free ground for hunters. When Ethan was finally cleared to leave the medical ship, he expected to be dropped back at his shelter. Instead, the officer met him again. "You have options now," the officer said. "You can relocate, join the frontier teams, or stay." Ethan looked out through the ship's window at the desert moon below. It looked the same and yet not. "I'll stay," he said after a moment. The officer nodded. "Figured you might." Ethan returned to the surface with supplies, proper equipment, and something he had never had before: backup. His shelter was repaired, reinforced. New sensors installed. The old traps were replaced with better ones. For the first time, he slept without listening for every sound. Weeks later, Sira and Leo returned. This time, they did not come in fear. They arrived with a small group under human escort. Other aliens like her, refugees rescued from gang routes. They were being relocated to a protected settlement nearby, one that would need builders, scouts, and people who knew how to survive harsh land. Sira stood beside Ethan, looking out over the growing settlement. "You could leave," she said. "Find an easier place." Ethan shook his head. "Someone has to make hard places better." She studied him, then nodded slowly. Leo toddled forward, unsteady but determined, and grabbed Ethan's pant leg. Ethan laughed and lifted the child easily. "Looks like I've been chosen," he said. Sira smiled, a real smile this time. Over time, stories spread. Gang survivors whispered about a desert moon where their strongest warriors vanished, about traps that moved like thinking creatures, about human ships that answered a single broken signal. They told stories of a human who stood alone and did not move. Among humans, Ethan became something else. Not a hero shouted about in loud halls, but a quiet example passed from soldier to settler, from officer to recruit. Protect the helpless. Stand your ground. Never assume one human stands alone. Months later, as the settlement grew and life returned to the desert moon, Ethan stood on a ridge at sunset. Sira stood beside him, Leo on her shoulders, watching the sky turn gold and red. "This world was empty once," she said. Ethan nodded. "Not anymore." Above them, a human patrol ship passed silently, watching, guarding. The galaxy would move on. New threats would rise. Old evils would try again. But somewhere among the stars, a simple truth had taken root. If you hunted the weak under human protection,